They thought they could pave over my land and silence me. But they didn't know I was the one who signed every highway into existence. Subscribe for more stories where power meets poetic justice. When the morning sun rose over the misty stretch of my cornfields, the smell of asphalt should never have been there. It hit me before I even reached the front porch, a sharp, oily tang that burned through the dew and memories of decades spent turning this land from dust to life. My name is Daniel Hayes, and my family has owned this farm for 137 years, until last month, when the Maplewood Homeowners Association decided progress meant pouring 6 lanes of concrete through the heart of it. They said it was for community development. They said I'd been compensated. But when I opened my mail and saw the smug letterhead, stamped with their logo instead of any federal seal, my blood froze. No authorization, no environmental assessment, no legal notice, just a pack of suburban amateurs with too much money and too little respect. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know that I'm not just a farmer. I'm the director of the Federal Highway Administration, the man who decides where every inch of U.S. asphalt begins and ends. I keep my identity quiet in town because I like peace more than power, but peace ended the moment those bulldozers touched my soil. The first day, I watched from my porch as they tore down my fence line and marked the ground with fluorescent paint. The second day, they brought in graders and crushed a century-old oak that shaded my father's grave. The third day, I smiled, because by then, I'd made a few calls. You see, the thing about infrastructure is that it's slow to start but unstoppable once it rolls. One document, one signature, one oversight, and your whole neighborhood can become a construction zone or a sinkhole. I didn't need revenge with fire or bullets. I had federal funding and the Code of Federal Regulations. I spent that night drafting a new proposal, Project Phoenix, Maplewood Arterial Expansion. It sounded harmless enough, a routine improvement of the suburban corridor. I pushed it through under a National Transportation Renewal Clause, buried deep in a budget no senator would bother to read. Within 48 hours, the project was approved, by me. They thought they were building a shortcut through my field. I was building a highway through their world. The next month, contractors arrived with federal permits and heavy machinery. FHWA members who once bragged about their golf course suddenly found survey stakes in their manicured lawns. The same smug president, Richard Callaway, who told me to accept progress, now stood on his porch in disbelief as orange cones lined his driveway. He called me, frantic, demanding answers. Daniel, there must be a mistake. They're expanding the route through Maplewood Estates. I paused, savoring the irony. No mistake, Richard. Federal oversight corrected your unauthorized construction. Consider it community development. His stammering protests were drowned out by the roar of diesel engines. But I wasn't done. Every act of arrogance they'd shown me, I mirrored back tenfold, with the precision only bureaucracy can deliver. I rerouted their power lines, for safety compliance, cut water access, for infrastructure maintenance, and reclassified their entire neighborhood as a temporary construction zone, which legally voided their HOA's authority. Their monthly meetings became cries of chaos. The same people who had laughed when they bulldozed my barn now held bake sales to pay for their legal fees. I didn't feel sorry, not yet. You might think I'm cruel, but you need to understand. I begged them to stop. I sent letters, filed injunctions, even met with their board to reason. Like civilized people, they laughed in my face. It's just land, one woman said, sipping her latte as if she hadn't just desecrated generations of sweat and memory. You can always buy more. That was the moment I decided to teach them the one lesson every bureaucrat knows. Nothing in America is just land. Every inch of it belongs to someone, somewhere, on paper, and I hold the paper. By week 6, Maplewood looked like a war zone. Half-built ramps rose like skeletons above cul-de-sacs, detour signs sprouted like weeds, and the HOA's gleaming fountain, the one they built with my property taxes, was reduced to rubble by an unfortunate miscalculation. Reporters swarmed in, sniffing scandal, but the beauty of the system is plausible deniability. Every document was signed, sealed, and legal. Every order originated from a public benefit clause. If anyone wanted to blame me, they'd have to climb a mountain of paperwork that could outlast their careers. Still, I wasn't entirely heartless. When Richard's wife came to my door one rainy evening, mascara streaking down her face, pleading for mercy, I offered her tea. She said they were losing their homes, their savings, everything. I asked her if she remembered the oak tree, the one that had shaded my father's grave. She didn't answer. I let the silence linger before I told her that progress, as her husband put it, had a price. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd become the same force they accused me of hating: cold, relentless, and efficient. But I justified it by telling myself that justice is never clean. Weeks turned to months. The project consumed the region, a tangle of asphalt veins stretching through every pretentious cul-de-sac and backyard pool. Some of the displaced residents sued the government, but their cases evaporated under the weight of legal jargon and environmental loopholes. Others fled, leaving, for sale, signs on cracked driveways that led nowhere. And my farm, it stood untouched, protected by the same regulations they once ignored. I rebuilt the barn, planted new crops, and installed a federal marker designating my land as a protected infrastructure heritage site. It was both poetic and practical. No one would dare touch it again. Then, one night, as I sat on my porch watching the lights of trucks carving their way through Maplewood, I began to wonder if I'd gone too far. The hum of machinery was no longer satisfying, it was haunting. My assistant, Claire, noticed my silence at the office. "You got what you wanted," she said gently. "Maybe it's time to stop." But men like me never really stop. Power doesn't switch off, it seeps into your bones. The following spring, a senator approached me with a proposal for a new interstate project. He called it the Hayes Initiative, a tribute to my uncompromising dedication. I almost laughed. They were glorifying revenge without even realizing it. That's when I decided to make one last move, not out of vengeance, but legacy. I redesigned the highway map of the entire state, threading new routes that bypassed towns run by corrupt HOAs and prioritized rural communities like mine. It wasn't personal anymore, it was structural retribution. Every policy meeting felt like a quiet rebellion disguised as progress. By the time the new fiscal year began, Maplewood Estates no longer existed on any official map. It had been renamed Hayes Junction, a transit hub connecting freight corridors. The irony was delicious. My enemies now lived under a name that honored the man who erased them. Yet, despite the triumph, a hollow ache remained. My father used to say that land doesn't just grow crops, it grows conscience. I feared mine had withered under asphalt and ambition. I visited his grave one last time before I left the farm for good. The new highway hummed softly nearby, a river of motion feeding a world that would never know its origin story. I told him I did what I had to do, that I defended our name and our soil the only way I knew how. The wind didn't answer, but the silence felt like approval. Years later, I'd read articles calling me a visionary reformer who revitalized transportation equity. They didn't know the truth, that my revolution began with a single trespass. They say history is written by the victors, but I say it's paved by them. Every highway tells a story of conquest, compromise, and control. And if anyone ever wonders why Maplewood vanished, they'll find no trace of the HOA's arrogance, only smooth, unbroken asphalt leading straight into my farm's heart, now a federal landmark, forever untouchable. But sometimes, when I drive those roads at night, headlights slicing through the mist, I think I see the ghost of that old oak tree standing proud beside the lane. Maybe it's my conscience, maybe it's memory, but it reminds me that revenge, like concrete, lasts longer than anyone expects. So next time someone tells you progress is inevitable, tell them about me. Tell them about the farmer who fought the system by becoming the system. And if they still don't understand, let them build their highway. Just make sure you're the one holding the map.